your eyes. Just take a deep breath with me. Can you smell that? It's the bouquet of the garden. The roses, the lilies, the lilacs, the tulips, daisies, sunflowers. They're all here. If you listen closely, you can hear the wind rustling through the leaves, squirrels scampering across the ground, the creek running over its rocks, and even the birds singing the morning song. And if we just be still and quiet, you can hear God say, "Good morning. Welcome to my garden." You can open your eyes. The garden is a beautiful place to be, and it has so much majestic and peaceful tranquility times in it. So the question I want to ask you this morning is, have you found your garden? A garden, a place where you can spend time with God, reflecting on your life. Maybe it's a simple place. If you haven't figured it out yet this morning, we're going to continue on in the sermon series, Hymns of Our Faith. And we're going to talk about my favorite hymn, probably some of yours, In the Garden. This hymn can be found in the United Methodist Hymnal as 314. But a lot of people don't know the story behind it. Don't know how it became what it is. So I want to start with a little bit of a history lesson. This hymn was written in April of 1912. We're going to take a couple of steps back first. The hymn was written by Charles Austin Miles, born in January of 1867 in New Jersey. This is 2 years after the Civil War. The country's rebuilding itself, and here is a young man being born. There's not much about Mr. Miles' life, but instead it talks about how he went to the University of Pennsylvania for college, and then continued his higher education in the Philadelphia School of Pharmaceuticals. Mr. Miles was a pharmacist. He had a career, he had a business, he was a well-known man in his community. And then one day, he decided he didn't want to do that no more. He had a passion for photography. And instead of working as a pharmacist, he decided he wanted to devote his life to his passion of photography and also to something he felt called by God to do, and that was to write music. The first song that Mr. Miles wrote was Jesus' Voice. And I'll be honest with you, I couldn't find a publishing date on that. Charles Miles is credited with 29 hymns written by himself. Most of those are still in circulation in hymnals today. But back to the song at hand. It's April of 1912, and as Mr. Miles is sitting in his dark room waiting for a photo to develop, he decided to do what he has always done. He has opened his Bible. He turns to his favorite passage, which is in John chapter 20, and he begins to read. And as Mr. Miles reads, a vision comes over him. He himself is standing in the garden with Mary. He's seeing all of the actions that is being told in the Scripture firsthand. And he knows the peace that is with him. He says he wasn't aware of his surroundings or his time or his place, but when he came back to himself, he was clenching his Bible tight and and standing in a blue lit room. And he knew at that moment what he had to do. Grabbing a pen and paper, he wrote those very words. Mr. Miles led a very full and great life for God, dying in the early 1900s, blessing us with so many hymnals. Now, why is this hymn my favorite? I'll be honest and tell you, my grandmother Durant taught me this hymn as a young child. She used to sing it to me constantly. In fact, I can remember times where you can hear her in the morning downstairs with the coffee brewing, the cards shuffling for solitaire, and she's just singing those precious words. So it brings back memories to me. But after reading the story of how this song became, I fell in love with it even more. Knowing now the scripture that it came from, it makes perfect sense. Because Mary was in the garden. She was there weeping because her God was gone. Her Lord was not there. You know, it was the first day of the week after his crucifixion. She came just to do what she knew had to be done, which was to prepare him for his burial. He wasn't there. She traveled that road on her way that morning in the dark, but most likely got there at daybreak. When she found he wasn't there, she ran back to the room where the other disciples were and told them all, but Peter and the beloved ran back to the garden. One getting there before the other, but wouldn't enter into the tomb until the other one did. And once they saw that he was not there, they turned and left. But here's something that's amazing. See, Mary wasn't far behind. She too ran back to the garden, and in her sorrow she stood there weeping, looking into the tomb. And of course, as the scripture says, there were the two angels. They asked her, "Why are you crying?" So distraught, she just told them, "They've taken my Lord. I don't know where he is." Most likely, with her eyes full of tears, she turned and went to walk away and heard the voice of someone she thought was a gardener ask the same question. But she just told him, "If you know where he's at, tell me, I'll go get him." It wasn't until the very moment that she heard him speak her name that she realized it was him. When was the last time we sat and listened for the voice? You know, we spent this past day and evening in Chandler at the lake. Beautiful settings, but I couldn't help but this morning to walk out and find a place to sit down and just listen. You know, they say prayer is a great way to communicate with God. We talk to God. We tell God this is what we need or what we want. And then we move on. A discipline that I have learned